Welcome back to Against the Cage, your MMA home for all the fight previews, recaps, and exclusive interviews that I know you're looking for, so make sure to give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that stuff. My name is Jake Aryeh. I'm joined by my esteemed co-hosts Scott Fontana and Erich Richter. And guys, let's talk about UFC 323 because there's a lot to go over. Of course, in the main event, Petr Yan defeating former longtime champion Merab Dvalishvili over the course of 5 rounds in a dominant fashion. So let's talk about that one first. Petr Yan, we talked about this last week. He seemed like a bit of an afterthought. Not a lot of people were talking about, his chances of beating Merab, more so the things that Merab was going after coming into this title defense. But like I said, dominant fashion over the course of those 5 rounds. And Erich, I'll throw it to you. With that in mind, now in hindsight, what were there any signs that we missed in these past few fights that Petr Yan has had since their initial match, Merab and Petr Yan? And if so, what were these missed signs? What do you think?
Yes, I definitely think there are some missed signs and hand up to me as well. Petr Yan, when he lost the first fight, was dominating in the grappling. He also had some signs in the past with Aljamain Sterling where he was dominating the grappling a little bit. He has put on significant amounts of weight, which I think really helped him, both in the power shots of the striking, as well as takedown defense and being able to wrestle off of the cage with his back against the cage. I think those are the bigger signs that we missed. Petr Yan, to me at least, looked massive in the octagon. I was super impressed with his striking techniques as well. His ability to fight off of the cage and use his striking in a way that he was able to really fight back against Merab, who was comfortable with the striking. And then what you saw once he got clipped in that first round, he was like, okay, let's go back to the takedown. He landed, I believe, one in the first round, but that was really not a whole lot of successful wrestling from Merab Dvalishvili. And, that betting line looks crazy now. Merab was minus 500 favorite, minus 600 favorite, higher maybe even. So that betting line looks crazy. We weren't the only ones. Right? Nobody really expected that kind of performance out of Petr Yan, but that's what it was. It was super impressive and definitely deserves his flowers. A second title reign for Petr Yan. How can I be mad about that?
What do you think, Scott? Any writing on the wall, so to speak?
I want to give a shout out to my guy Dan Tom, who does a lot of work in the betting space, and he did foresee a Petr Yan victory. So shout out to my guy Dan on that one. He is probably one of the lone voices that I really saw voicing that. So, but I'll give you one thing to kind of consider on top of what Erich was already talking about here, and just the fact that obviously the 1-4 stretch that he endured from 2021 to 23, I think that gets a lot of attention, right? And I think there's a lot of ways where we can very much recontextualize that. There's obviously a disqualification loss to Aljamain Sterling in a fight that he was on track to win on the cards if basically he just doesn't throw that really ridiculously dumb illegal knee. There's also the split decision loss to Sean O'Malley. A lot of people really thought that was a Petr Yan victory to begin with, right? There is also the fact that the Aljamain Sterling rematch, that was a split decision as well. I thought that Aljo won that fight, but realistically, there is one judge that thought that way. Another judge agrees, it goes the other way. So if you can kind of do that, you're actually talking about a very plausible multiverse branch here, where Petr Yan, in 7 years in the UFC, is 15-1 coming into this fight. That is a very impressive record, and I think it's something that if it was any other way, even with the way the first fight went, we're not necessarily getting to the point of a 400 or 500, minus 500 or plus 500, whichever way it was, Erich, the betting line there. I think it's going to be a lot closer, and maybe we just slept on him because, frankly, his record and his recent years just hadn't been as impressive.
Yeah, and also something that I want to mention too is even those wins that he did have, this is something that we spoke about last week that you mentioned, Scott. He wasn't necessarily getting those finishes as of late, and I think that might have been something that played into people's heads as well. It's like you're looking at the record, and on paper he's not getting these finishes, and it can be easy to get lost into some of those things. And obviously Merab was a very dominant champion, so.
And another thing too, I mean, you talk about those recent, even the wins, right? Let's talk about this little mini win streak that he put together prior to winning the championship back. Even just the most recent fight against Marcus McGee, it was a fight that on paper 29-28, I believe is what it was, right? I think it was
Yep.
29-28 all around.
Yep.
You watch that fight, it's not very close. It's competitive, but not close in a sense. Like Petr Yan won the fight, but he's not putting like this major stamp on it that you kind of, when you're looking for someone to say, hey, they're in a second act now. They're actually doing something like drastically different or impressive. And that's not exactly what we were getting from Petr Yan yet. This performance was by far his best performance I think we could probably say since he beat Corey Sandhagen for the interim title, what, 4+ years ago, 4 or 5 years ago? It's
Yep.
been a long time.
Yeah, that's the crazy part. Kind of exactly how you said it. It's like these past few wins. I would put this performance on its own as the best one, and it's against inarguably like the toughest challenger in or challenge in Merab Dvalishvili. So it's very interesting. But I do have to ask.
Agreed.
I do have to ask you, Scott. Now that Petr Yan is the champion at 135, do we foresee an extended life to his second title run? I know you said last week that this is someone that you thought was going to be a champion for a very long time. Is he picking up where you thought he left off, or what do you think?
I mean, absolutely possible. It's going to be tricky. He's got some interesting fights coming up, even whether it's Merab next or not. But I can see it again. He's only 32, like I said last week. I think maybe it's possible he's just more ready for this now than he ever was. We're talking about somebody who he's known for kind of maybe giving away that first round a little bit, downloading data, as we like to say, right?
Hmm.
Maybe he needed to download data on his first title run, and now he's got a little bit more familiarity with it, a little more comfort with it. Maybe now is when he's set up for it because he's a terrific MMA boxer, right? He can mix in kicks. He's got some nice little trips he likes to throw in there as well. Sturdy takedown defense, that ability to get a takedown when he really wants it. He will go there and deliver punishment on the ground. He's got a good gas tank. This combination, it ranks very high for me in terms of like the ideal archetypes for this sport. So I think he's set up to go pretty far, and I think now the maturity might be there too. So he might have a really extended run. We'll see.
How about you, Eric? What do you think?
God, I'm shocked to hear you say that. I'm not so sure. I'm still not so sure that Petr Yan will have an extended run at bantamweight. I look at a lot of contenders. I think that regardless of what happens next, you have Merab Dvalishvili and you have him as potential rematch. I don't know what the betting line would be for that, but based on the last one, I'd say that good chance that Petr Yan is an underdog defending his belt. It's pretty rare, but who knows? I mean, that the performance is dominant. I'm not taking anything away from him, but who knows how a rematch goes? I do feel like Yan kind of ran into a day where he was the better man that night. I'm not so sure he's the better fighter, and I also would think he's definitely going to be a betting underdog to Umar Nurmagomedov. I don't think that there's a way that he's favored in that fight. So, I mean, just those two off the rip, he's already lost to Sean O'Malley. We know that, and of course, in a 5 round fight, Petr Yan will be favored against Sean O'Malley. But I think the point remains there's a lot of contenders at bantamweight. Bantamweight is one of the deepest divisions in MMA. I would like to see how he went up against, like a Mario Bautista. If he probably won 1 or 2 wins away from a potential title bout. I would be. I'm cautious that I don't know if he'll even defend this belt once. I think Umar will have a really, really a favorable matchup. I think it's a favorable matchup for Umar. I like this matchup better than Rob, frankly.
Anything from yeah.
Look, I get it, Eric. I do. I can see it, but also at the same time, I could see it going the other way very easily. What he did to Merab Dvalishvili, he can do again. Why not? He already did it. And it wasn't fluky.
No,
every
it
minute
was
of that
dominant.
round, more or that fight, practically. I mean, I think I gave round two to Merab, but frankly, most of the time, it was very easily a Petr Yan
Huh.
fight. I don't see why he can't do the same thing to Umar as well. It's not going to be the same apples to apples kind of thing, but I could see it being there. Umar Nurmagomedov is not Khabib Nurmagomedov, right? They fight differently. I don't know that the stuff that Umar brings to the table is going to necessarily be better. We've already seen him be at that top level and fall short. Sometimes we see that pattern in the UFC where these guys maybe they don't get over the hump. I have questions there with Umar. Not that he can't, but can he? We haven't seen it. We've seen Jan do it 2 times though. And again, that O'Malley fight. Hey, First one was very close, and a lot of people thought vehemently that Petr Yan
Yes.
won that first fight. There are some strong opinions that Sean O'Malley just didn't
Yes.
deserve that win. So frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes even more strongly in the Petr Yan corner next time if they are to fight. So if look, that's a murderer's row right there. But he can definitely get past it. And if he does, now we're starting to talk about a really, really impressive champion.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think that after a performance like Jan had on Saturday night, I think he's got to be a favorite. Umar, I could see him not being a favorite against, but I think against Merab he would be, and I think against O'Malley he would be again. That being said, though, to your point, Eric, bantamweight is obviously a very, very deep division, and while he is 2 years younger than Merab, who I believe he's 35 currently, so
He will be 35 soon.
okay, got you. So Piotr's got a couple years left before we get to the whole 35 curse and all that jazz, but it is a deep division, like you said, Eric. Anything can kind of happen. But I know we're talking. Yeah.
One thing really quick, Scott, I'm shocked that you didn't have 50-45. I had it 50-45 in favor of Jan. And Daniel Cormier, just one thing. Daniel Cormier having the fight, 2-0 Merab after two was baffling. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, I can tell you that there was at least one judge who had it 2-0 for Merab after 2 rounds. So normally I don't, no disrespect to Daniel Cormier, I don't think much of him as an MMA judge or an understanding of the application of the criteria. But there is an actual official scorecard that matches that. I was a little surprised actually that round one went unanimously to Merab. That's the round that I thought, okay, Jan got off to a really good start here. It's not that you can't make that case. But I didn't really quite see it that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been talking a little bit about what could be next for Jan, and obviously having Merab been a dominant champion, a few title defenses under his belt, arguably the greatest bantamweight of all time coming into this fight, right? Do you guys think that he deserves a rematch? I'll start with you, Eric. I know that Jan has said that he doesn't necessarily want it, but what do you think about the immediate rematch?
I don't understand why Jan doesn't necessarily want it. I mean, minute to minute, as a plus 500 underdog, he rolled in that fight. I don't understand why he wouldn't want it per se. I don't know if he gave a reason, but that confused me. I was like, dude, that's what was the reason? Do you know?
Basically, he was saying, "Hey, I didn't get an immediate rematch when I lost my title. He should have to earn it too." It was kind of one of those like, "Why should you get it if I didn't?"
Yeah,
Oh.
lame. Yeah,
what he
lame.
said.
He kind of did
That's
get
just
an immediate rematch, technically.
Yeah,
I know
didn't-
the knee to the head. It's a little bit
Yeah.
different
No, but
circumstances.
that wasn't exactly it. That was
Yeah.
a little different. Yeah,
Little
Just playing
different.
I
devil's
get what he's
advocate.
saying. You're not
Yeah,
wrong.
I
get
don't know.
that.
I think that's a little bogus in my opinion. Merab Dvalishvili had such, and I talked about this on Twitter. Merab had a more substantial title reign than maybe any champion since COVID. I'd like to go down a list one day and just be like title reigns since COVID. He's probably top five. He accomplished so much in a year. I think that he's owed a second title shot here. I mean, it's shocking that he didn't out takedown Jan. Jan gets credited with 5 takedowns. Merab gets credited with 2. I mean, that's a crazy thing to look at. I would like to see a trilogy. I think that this is the fight to make, and it's tough. All 3 fights have gone 5 rounds for in the trilogy, but regardless, I think that this is the fight to make. You do the trilogy fight and you move on, and then the winner moves forward and probably fights Umar. If you want to do Sean O'Malley at the White House, if O'Malley gets by Yadong, obviously we're projecting stuff out here. I think that's an interesting fight too. If you wanted to do like say Jan fights O'Malley at the White House, I think that could be interesting. If Merab is like not healthy or something or injured, I know he joked and slash said that he had a broken hand. I don't know if he'd be ready to turn around in July or June, but I think that those are your 2 fights: Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley at the White House, or the trilogy fight with Merab, pending health.
Well, just on the idea of Jan and Sean O'Malley potentially happening if at the White House, I don't know that we're looking to try and put the Russian champion in a position where he could leave the White House with the championship in our nation's 250th anniversary. That might not be the optics that they're searching for. I don't know. Who knows what they're doing? But as far as the actual, should this be an immediate rematch? I say absolutely, definitely, 100%. You kind of hit the nail on the head for most of those reasons I would have said too, Eric. It's 1-1. Do the rubber match. Let's settle this and move on. I think we can absolutely close the book on this one in an interesting way because we don't usually have a rubber match, a trilogy fight after one guy dominates one fight and the other guy dominates the other fight. Usually there's something in there that's a little closer or a little, maybe like one person got a finish early and another person won a decision. This fight, there's a lot of questions I have. Which version of each of these guys is going to show up? I want to see it. I don't want to see anything else. Nobody else has put a mandate on being in that title shot next. I just don't see it. It's not Umar. It's certainly not Sean O'Malley. Even if he beats Song Yadong, do this fight.
One thing I will say is I would be okay with it if the next person that Piotr faces is not Merab, but I think that Merab's next fight should be for the title. And I believe Merab has said that that's what Dana has, quote unquote, promised him. Obviously, things change, and the UFC or Dana White saying that they're going to be doing something is not something you can take as gospel until you see, pen to paper, the announcements and whatnot. But I would be okay with Umar, or if Sean wins, that being the next fight for Piotr, just because there has been some talk, and we'll get into this in a second, about Merab's activity perhaps hindering his performance in there, and that kind of takes that equation out of it if you give him a little bit of rest. That being said, Merab, he is, he's not getting any younger, so I guess that would be the argument for getting it done sooner rather than later.
The other thing there, Jake, is I mean, what's Merab going to do in the interim if he's not fighting? This is a guy who legitimately said he wanted to fight 4 times a year for the title 2 years in a row. This was his goal. You're going to keep him on the shelf? Petr Yan doesn't strike me as the guy who's going to be fighting 3 times a year to defend his title. So if they're waiting for Merab to get his shot after Yan defends another time, when is Yan going to defend? May? Does that put his next title fight in like December? I don't know that you can just keep Merab on the shelf for 12 months and what the point would be. So I don't know about that.
That's valid. The only thing that I would say is, at least on Merab's part, if the timing works out, let's say where he's waiting a little bit longer than he has, where this past one it was 2.5, 3 months before his last fight. Not even, it was like 2.5 months.
It was 2 months. 2 months and like a day or something.
Absolutely insane. I think if he took 6 months, 6-7 months between this fight and the next one, if it's for the title, I think that could benefit his body. The weight cuts that he was going through this year 4 times, I think that could definitely take a toll on you. So I would say just maybe letting his body recover could be a good thing. But I totally understand that it kind of opens up a can of worms on if Petr Yan is ready to fight, and keeping him out for a year isn't exactly ideal either. So, yeah, we'll see. But let's
Yan did a good job. Yan, sorry, just one thing to wrap on before we wrap on Merab versus Yan. Yan obviously made a bunch of really clear adjustments, especially with the body work. And I just think that that's super impressive. I think that the weight cuts might have had something to do with it, but I think about how smart that is when you have someone that's cut weight 4 times to get to 135, and then you start ripping them to the body, really make them feel those weight cuts. It's interesting, right? And that liver shot was a thing of beauty.
Absolutely. And we're not done totally talking about the fight just yet, because we got to talk about Merab a little bit more. But, Scott, I'll throw it to you. I was just referencing, the activity being something that people have pointed to for the reason of his performance. Do you think that this was the root cause of it? What do you make of that?
I actually don't. I'm going to push against that. I'm not saying it had nothing to do with it, or that the weight cuts in particular, more the weight cuts than just the fact that he was fighting. But I would actually put a little more, if I had to put it in anything, and I'm not necessarily putting all my eggs in this either, I'd put it more in some of those health issues that Merab has identified since the fight. He was battling norovirus the week of. He had a broken hand. Those sound like things that are going to be a lot more inhibiting to a performance over a 5-round fight against a former champion than just the fact that he just fought a couple months ago. I don't put as much into that one. I think sometimes that gets a little overblown. It can definitely get overblown, but he's not the most massive of bantamweights ever. He's large. He cuts weight, but it's we've seen some really bad ones before, and I don't know that he puts into that category there. So honestly, at the end of the day, though, he just didn't execute against an extremely well prepared opponent who he'd already again had won the UFC title. He knew what it takes to win that title, and at the end of the day, you just got to execute. And I don't think he did.
What do you think, Eric? What do you make of that theory?
I mean, it could be for sure. I mean, when anytime that you lose, you look for different things. Obviously, we talked about him talking about being sick and his wrist and or his hand, and there's a lot of different things. I think more is just everyone. There's a different person that's in front of you every time, even if you fought them before. It's a whole different day. It's like a blackjack hand. Every outcome is different. There is no percentages here. Like you're facing a different animal every time. Jan was extremely well prepared, and Merab just wasn't the better man on that night. I don't think that this means that he will lose the next time that they fight. I think the odds will be smaller, but I think there's very well within the range of outcomes that it's a totally different fight next time. I just think that he wasn't the better man that night, and it is what it is. It happens all the time. Kind of like Alex Pereira against Magomed Ankalaev. I could totally see it going that way, where Ankalaev kind of like put Pereira on his back foot and not even taking him down, just doing a really good job beating him in the striking, like just some like kind of like bizarre stuff that you saw there. I wouldn't be surprised if Merab went out there this next time and put his game plan on Petr Yan and dominated the next fight. I think MMA is there is no such thing as MMA math, right? We talk about it all the time. And I feel like could be one of those things where you have no idea what will happen the next time these two fight. That's why I want to see the trilogy.
Absolutely, 100%. Give me that trilogy. And honestly,
Yeah.
what I'm really hoping for is that we finally get a fight between these two guys where, hey, maybe they both come to fight and there's like a little bit of a back and forth
Yeah.
kind of war.
Hmm.
That would be fun. That would be a perfect close. And then I think we're starting to talk about the breadth of this trilogy as maybe one of the most entertaining and most fascinating that we've ever had in this sport. That would be really
Yes,
cool.
that's the only thing that this trilogy is missing is two guys going at each other at their best. Because honestly, like the first fight wasn't that competitive. It was 11 takedowns from Merab Dvalishvili. He doubled him up in striking, and then this fight, it was kind of the opposite. It was like Jan was dishing out all the damage, even though the striking numbers are close. But I mean, Jan's dishing out all the damage.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a perplexing one. So that is all I could really hope for in the trilogy fight is a competitive fight. That would be good because the past two ones have not been very competitive. But we were just talking about the trilogy. Eric, I'll throw this to you. If that trilogy fight isn't next, this is the other sort of scenario that we haven't really talked about yet. For Merab, if they do want to keep him active, if he does want to stay active before he gets the title shot, and if he gets that title shot, what do you do with him? What's the next fight for Merab?
I got two, but they're further down the rankings. Like not too much. I could go Song Yadong if you beat Sean O'Malley, right? That's an option. My top option, honestly, is Mario Bautista. I know, like we've seen him fight Umar that wasn't particularly close. But I've been pretty high on Mario Bautista for a little while now. I like his grappling style. I like that he's able to. I don't think he'll be totally dominated by Rob in the grappling department. I think that he can be a little bit offensive. And we saw Jan do that in this fight. And I think that it's important for any fighter that Merab fights to also be able to have the option to be offensive in the grappling rather than just only fending off takedowns for 15 minutes or 25 minutes, depending on if it's a main event. Another option, if you really want to go further down and just get him in quick. I don't know what Peyton Talbot's injury situation is. He's ranked number 12, so he's a little further down there. But I think that's another one if you want to try to build him up really quickly and get him up to a title shot quickly. I don't know how many times Peyton Talbot will be able to make that weight for much longer. So I think that's an option too. So those are my three really. It's Song Yudong if he beats Sean O'Malley, Mary Bautista, or Peyton Talbot if you really wanted to go further down and go for a deep hit.
I find it a little bit tougher for Song just because they fought back in 2024 in what was it, March in Miami.
Yeah.
But it's not unheard of that, as we're finding out in February of next year, it's not unheard of that someone who's recently lost to a champion can't get a title shot. But what do you think, Scott?
Honestly, because Marab has beaten so many of these guys up at the top, I mean, we're going to start getting into rematch territories. That's why we had a Petr Yan fight, frankly, because we needed to go
Yeah.
into the rematch realm for Merab Dvalishvili. If it goes that way, I'm much more okay with it than I would honestly think I would be. But yeah, I don't know about the Peyton Talbot thing. I have some more thoughts a little later on on Peyton Talbot, but. Um, I think maybe the Bautista one does sound a little interesting if he can get through. I believe the matchup is I was going to reference this later, but we'll bring it in now. He is supposed to be. It's in the works. It's reported he's going to be fighting in the main event against Vinicius Oliveira on February 7th,
Hmm.
and so that's an Apex card. So look, the winner of that one. Hey, maybe that makes a lot of sense. Sure, you could do that, and then just kind of keep him busy and keep him in that area where maybe he's staying in the title picture. I don't know. It's tricky because you just don't have guys who've beaten so many of the top contenders otherwise. So, fresh matchup. That's where I would go, I guess.
Hmm. Well, I think that kind of wraps us up for the main event. Let's talk about the co-main event where, I mean, talk about another disappointing end to a title fight in 2025. Joshua Van versus Alexandre Pantoja. First 26 seconds were looking like we were in for a pretty good fight until Josh Van goes for a takedown, essentially, and Alexandre Pantoja posts. His elbow very visibly did not look like it was going the right way in that moment. Looks like it dislocated. The UFC said that it was a shoulder injury. There's been a lot of theories suggesting that it was the elbow or the shoulder, what have you. I'll leave that up to the doctors, but
I believe it was later confirmed to be an elbow.
okay.
Pretty sure.
It did not look right.
I'm pretty sure we learned later that it was his ankle, guys.
I mean, that's honestly, that wouldn't have been out of the world of speculation for what we were hearing on
It's his
Saturday
heart.
night.
His heart has problems.
It was bad. But obviously not a satisfactory ending, not what Joshua Van wanted in the way to become champion. How do we think of him as champion? How should we think of him as champion, Eric? What's your perception?
Little lucky. I mean, it's tough. Like he was betting underdog here. He's 24. He's one of the youngest champions in UFC history now. So I don't look at this and be like, you're a little fortunate. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with being fortunate. And we're not saying that you don't deserve to be the champion. You're the champ. You got the title shot. This is fantastic for you. It's just, to win in 15 seconds, you're a little lucky. He's one of the luckier champions. Almost kind of feels like
26 seconds, sir.
26 seconds. 26 seconds. Regardless, it's tough because it's like, it's like when Aljamain won the title against Petr Yan. I mean, obviously that one was worse, right? But when Aljamain won the title against Petr Yan, that was due to DQ. This is due to injury. I cannot remember the last time that a title switched hands due to an injury. Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman, comes to mind. I'm trying to think of other ones.
But there was more fight there for sure.
That one in particular. Not only that, not only was there more fight there, that was the result of an action, a defensive action. So I don't even put that in the fluke territory. That's that is something that is built into that move. That if you can counter it, that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's a good point. That is a really good point. And I don't know. I'll categorize him as lucky right now. That doesn't mean that he won't have a long title reign and that he is the deserving champion. He's just super lucky to be the champ and win inside of a minute against a fighter that, frankly, was a favorite here. You had a dominant champion going on his 5th title defense. He's had the grappling advantage in theory. We learned nothing about Joshua Van in this big spot. We didn't learn a whole lot. So he's the champ. Congrats, but you're lucky to be here.
Yeah, that's the thing. Eric hit the nail on the head here. This is a fighter who a champion now who just didn't prove he was better than the former champion who he defeated. And that's not through any fault of his own, really. He caught a kick. Pantoja ended up trying to post because it was an attempted takedown, and everything went haywire from there. In some ways it was his own actions, but obviously that wasn't an expected result of those actions. What I look at when I see Joshua Van is I see a belt holder with a lot to prove. I don't see necessarily a champion. I see a belt holder. He holds the belt. It's true. I'm not trying to be insulting, but I think even he would probably have to admit he just didn't show that he was the better fighter yet. But he also didn't show that he's not. So that's why it's so imperative that we get these guys to, at some point, resolve things whenever Pantoja is healthy enough to be able to do that. He's definitely one of the top 2 flyweights in the world. I feel comfortable with that. But right now, I'd say he's kind of only 2. I would rank him behind Pantoja still, honestly.
Wow. Yeah, I don't blame you. We didn't learn anything in that fight.
Yeah, there was nothing to prove us like to prove otherwise, should we say? But Scott,
it's almost like a no contest. It's technically there was a result, but it feels much more like a no contest.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Scott, I gotta ask you, because we've had a few disappointing. I guess one other, Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane earlier this year is an example here. This is a pretty disappointing result. That was a disappointing result. Is this the most disappointing result of a title fight that you can remember, or do you have something else for us?
Bit of a snake bet fourth quarter of 2025, huh? We with the two here.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll throw out those kind of maybe the terribly boring title fights and the fights that went the distance and had extremely questionable, scorecards coming off of it. I'll leave those out and I'll give you three more in addition to Aspinall, right? Three more that kind of stick out to me. We've already mentioned the Petr Yan illegal knee costing him that fight against Aljamain Sterling. That was kind of the one that obviously people think of as well. But I'll give you two that I think are also pretty disappointing results. One is involving Anderson Silva. That was Patrick Cote challenging him for the title many years back. Blew out his knee in the third round. It was not a particularly super great fight to begin with, but Cote's fight, his knee just kind of gave out. So that was an unfortunate result there. That left a sour taste. But for my money, the most disappointing title fight result ever is Vitor Belfort winning the light heavyweight title from Randy Couture because his glove sliced Randy Couture's eyelid through happenstance in 49 seconds. It was so anticlimactic. The punch just landed in such a way that it was on the eyelid and the doctors would not let it continue. And that was it. It was very like this was more devastating for the champion himself, but like, man, you're just waiting to figure this out. There's a whole lot of like boring and waiting, and the fight never got going, and it was even worse. You guys should go find that just so you can see.
Oh yeah, that's a self-homework assignment.
Part of me is like, I want to go watch that, and then part of me is like, I really don't. Like, I don't know.
It's not gruesome.
Okay.
It's not gruesome.
Okay, that's good.
No, I wouldn't call it gruesome. It was a cut on the eyelid. That's a part that often that's kind of what you're gonna do to stop it. That's a bad spot. For the fight to continue. Like the literal eyelid, not above the eye, the eyelid.
Gotcha.
Very strange.
Yeah, that is. My goodness. Well, let's talk about what could be next for Joshua Van, because he is the champion, and obviously he is injured at the moment. We don't know necessarily the full extent of those injuries, but Dana White did say at the post-fight presser that it is likely that Josh will be facing someone before they can make that rematch. So who do you guys think should be next? Eric, what do you think is next for Joshua Van?
Well, I mean, there's a fight this weekend, which we'll talk about. It's obviously Brandon Royval versus Manel Kape. There could be some implications there. We'll talk more about that fight. Manel Kape were to get through that one. I think that's a fun matchup. Kape versus Joshua Van would be, definitely get some attention. Tatsuro Taira looked excellent against Brandon Moreno. Finished Brandon Moreno, which is pretty rare. Brandon Moreno is very hard to get out. I actually thought that was a good stoppage too, for what that's worth. I think that the winner of this fight or Tatsuro Taira makes the most sense. I'm really interested to see what Scott has to say about this. Tatsuro Taira is pretty controversial, just in general, like throughout his career. Grappler first, not getting a ton of respect, I guess. But he was, a betting favorite here against Brandon Moreno. So I would do Manel Kape, especially since it would be a striker versus striker matchup. I think that would be pleasing aesthetically. And it would make sense if he's able to get past Royval, who had a razor-tight decision against Joshua Van earlier this year. Really fun fight.
I think for my money, I would really like to see, especially if it is Royval who comes out of this weekend the victor, and especially if it's an impressive or exciting performance, I think he really ought to get it ahead of Tatsuro Taira in my book. I think you do a rematch of the fight of the year, this time with more time to prepare and over 5 rounds. How is that not like going to be an amazingly fun fight? I think that absolutely delivers. But I do have a feeling that regardless of this weekend, the UFC will go to Tatsuro Taira. Even though Taira did lose a split decision to Royval last fall, I think sometimes that slips on the radar a little bit here. Close fight, right? We're talking about split decision here. But if they can put that in Japan, like maybe Dana White was musing about post-fight, I could see them wanting to do that from a promotional standpoint. It just makes some sense to do that. You've got two Asian fighters fighting for the title in Asia. I think that's something that can draw a lot of eyeballs and draw a lot of potential growth in that market if that's what they're looking to do, right? So I don't know that Cop does that. I think even with a Cop win here, unless he goes out and does something amazing, I think it's probably going to be Tyra or Royval again if he wins.
Yeah,
Interesting. For what it's worth, Manel Kape is a minus 350 favorite
really.
against Brandon Royval. Yeah.
That is shocking. Scott, what do you think of
Yeah.
that?
I mean, I'm a little surprised by that number. It's not that I couldn't
Yeah.
foresee a Cop victory, but my goodness, minus 350.
Against Brandon Royval.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, by the way,
And
and
the
shout.
line has
Yeah.
the line has gone in Cop's favor too. I bet Royval last week when I saw he was plus 200. The Cop steam has continued to come in.
That's unreal.
Very
Wow.
strange. I'm curious.
Yeah.
Now I really want to see what actually happens here. I
Yeah.
don't see
Yeah.
it that way though.
And by the way, shout out Scott putting on an interview with Brandon Royval that went up earlier this week, so make sure to check that one out. And also Eric, who spoke to Nikisa Bedarian ahead of Jake Paul's fight next weekend. So check those ones out. But let's wrap up this fight and talk about Pantoja, who, of course, was injured. Do you think that he can bounce back from this, Eric? What do you think?
Depends on how long he's out for. I mean, anytime you lose the belt over something like this, it's always going to be that stinks, right? And you never know when the next time you're going to get an opportunity is. There's an age concern here. He's fought a lot. His record, off the top of my head, I don't even remember it. I believe it was like 30-5, 30-7. He's fought a lot, and he was on a roll here. It's unfortunate to see his reign end with an injury. It's like, come on. He was on his way to being maybe the second best flyweight ever. I don't know if everyone will be able to eclipse what Demetrius Johnson did when he was here. But regardless, will he be able to come back from this? It's unfortunate that we're talking about the Kiori Horiguchi fight. Now we're not even talking about Kiori Horiguchi fighting for the title. Right now, there's tons of contenders that can jump up here and fight. So it's a bummer for Pantoja, it's a bummer for Horiguchi as well. I think that at the end of the day, I think that Pantoja is going to have to probably, if he's out for the year, he might have to fight again and then fight for the title. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully he's able, for his potential hopes of getting to a title, he's going to need to rattle off a win, maybe fight Tyra, maybe fight Royval, and then get up to the title shot. It's a precarious position, I would say, when you lose the belt on something like this and then have to be away for an extended period of time. Puts you in the lurch a little bit, I feel.
What do you got, Scott?
Even with the way UFC can kind of be, of the moment and shiny new thing in their booking of title fights, I really would have a hard time believing they're not going to give Pantoja an immediate title shot whenever he is ready. You have question marks here. We're already talking about, between you and me, we both think that Pantoja kind of hasn't been dethroned in a sense. So I don't think they're ever going to put that off. But as far as if he can bounce back, look, he is going to be 36 by the time he fights again. We don't know how long he will be out. I don't necessarily foresee him falling off a cliff, but it depends how long he's on the shelf and how much does that, type of weird injury actually get into his head or not? It probably doesn't. I think he's an older, more seasoned guy. I could probably move past it, but I guess I'm mildly pessimistic right now that he does regain that belt. It's just there's a lot of guys out there, and the division's going to start moving on. And
Yep.
even if they're not going to move on in terms of giving a title shot, there's going to be growth of this division. He's going to have to rehab more than he's going to have to grow his game and sharpen his
Mhm.
tools, and that's gonna hurt him a little bit.
I'm no doctor, but I will say from what I have seen from doctors, the elbow, if that's the most significant injury, I'm not really sure on what the deal is with the shoulder. That type of injury.
We agreed that it was his lungs.
We said ankle too.
Elbows are generally easier to heal than something like, obviously, like a shin injury that like Anderson Silva suffered. But yeah, he'll have to sit out of the gym and not, or he won't be doing the things that he would like to be doing with his training that he would otherwise be capable of doing. So that can definitely have an effect on you.
He'll be coaching up Kiori Horiguchi rather than the other way around.
Fair enough. But let's wrap up that fight and wrap up UFC 323. Do we have any haymakers to talk about before we wrap this one up?
I got a haymaker for you, and it pertains to, we mentioned him earlier. Well, Eric mentioned him earlier. Peyton Talbot, and look, he just had his coming out, the giant coming out party, shutting out Henry Cejudo in his retirement fight, and for better or worse, that means he's done with the prospect label, right? I think he's now in the big fish territory here. He impressed the heck out of me. I must say here, I was very impressed with what I saw from him, but I don't know if I'm convinced that he is going to just keep on swimming at this level. The fight against Raoni Barcelos back in January, that I haven't forgotten it. Like, it didn't really go his way. He didn't look particularly fantastic that night. How good is Raoni Barcelos? That's obviously the question Henry Cejudo has asked since then. That was a fun little way to frame that as well. But I don't know. I think he could experience maybe some ups and downs even at this level still. That isn't to say I don't believe in his championship ceiling, because I don't think I've ever been more convinced of his championship ceiling. So we'll see. Time will tell. I'll give you one fight that I actually want to see for him next. I think this would be interesting. Marlon Chito Vera, I think,
Oh
would be an
yeah,
interesting matchup.
that's a
Banger.
good one. I like that.
Banger. Banger. I love that one.
It's
If
it's a guy who's a lot bigger. I think Henry Cejudo, he just had massive size over, and honestly, that's kind of almost working in his favor in my mind if he was to fight Merab, like you were suggesting earlier. But I don't know that I want to do that one just yet. I think
I
I
want to push
still
him up
want to see
the
a little more seasoning up there.
my thing, I want to push him up the ladder quickly. He's 5'10" and making 135. It's not gonna last very long. It's my way I look at it.
it's a fair
Fair
point.
enough.
I know Sean and Mick are listening right now, so heed
They
this
are.
advice.
They are. They text me all the time.
Fact.
Alrighty, well,
Yes.
let's talk about the fight that's happened this weekend. Obviously, we've been referencing it throughout the show. Brandon Royval will be taking on Manel Kopp, and a little bit of a later fight night event. 10 p.m. Eastern is when the main card will start. 7 p.m. on the prelims, all on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus. So that'll be on cable television, rounding out the ESPN era. But let's talk about that. Scott, is this the right capper for the ESPN era, the final event of this streaming agreement between the two companies? What do you think, Scott?
Look, the first UFC event on the ESPN deal, that was Henry Cejudo defending his flyweight title against TJ Dillashaw. So I think it's perfect synergy to close out at 125 pounds as well. I love it. I love that the UFC has fully embraced the flyweight fights without championship gold on the line now. It's not something we really were accustomed to seeing for many, many years. But in recent years, we've started to see that a lot more. So I think it's the best sign of the health of the flyweight division that they're putting this on as the very end of it. And once again, same thing as they came in, they're coming out with a flyweight headliner. So I think it's great.
It's pretty poetic. How about you, Eric? What do you think?
I mean, it's perfect. What better way to end the ESPN era than at the warehouse? It's perfect. We end at the Apex, no fans. It's just chef's kiss. Thank you, UFC. ESPN app sucks. Let's end it with no fans in the Apex, in the warehouse, late start card. The last time we'll get a 10 o'clock for at least 7 years, it seems like. It is perfect. Apex show, end the UFC era, get the ESPN app off my TV. I'm tired of seeing the commercial break technical difficulty screen. I'm done with it. Let's move on.
Like, listen, we don't know that there's not going to be 10 p.m. start times for these Paramount Plus cards. It's really more the numbered events that they're saying the main card is going to come back down to 9 o'clock start times. We could certainly see. I have no reason to believe otherwise that we could see 10 p.m. start times. It just depends on where they are and what they want to do. Because if it's just on Paramount Plus, they don't have to worry about a television, broadcast situation. I don't know. We'll see what it's like. One thing though, while we're kind of on this, actually, they're bringing up the CBS era, the Paramount era, Paramount Plus, excuse me. TKO president and COO Mark Shapiro was just speaking on a conference call yesterday, and he's basically alluded to that half of the numbered events are going to be on CBS as well, at least in some form. I don't know how specific it kind of was, but that's a lot more than we saw during the ESPN era of them going over to ABC these last 7 years. So I think that's cool that we can at least start to set a baseline that's a little more active on, especially the network television here, hopefully expand it out, reach more people, and give more opportunities for people to watch these impressive fights without having to fork over $120 even a year, which is, again, better than it used to be. But, I like it. I like giving it to the people, reach the masses.
Absolutely. And let's talk about the other fights on this card. Of course, there are many. Scott, what is your fight to watch?
I'm giving you Neil Magny against Yaroslav Amosov. I can't even imagine why this is stuffed on the prelims, other than that they want to bury a former Bellator champion just because, as if he's some sort of prospect. It seems goofy, but this is fascinating. I think it's a great way to start Amosov's run here. I've been waiting to see how he would fare against the welterweights of the UFC. I think he's got the potential to swim for quite a while here. I don't know what his ceiling is, but Magny's a good test. I like it.
Eric, what do you got?
Good fight. I'll see a fight, a Regio fight. Women's Amanda Lemos versus Jillian Robertson. Probably the first time I've done a women's fight down here. But I'm super excited for this one. I think Jillian Robertson's a low key like potential title challenger. Her striking has gotten a lot better. Now I still think that she's going to need to get takedowns here in order to win the fight. If Lemos is able to avoid the takedown, she's certainly a live dog here. Robertson, obviously, a savage with the submissions. This one's going to be action packed finish. This is going to be super fun.
Alrighty. And then for me, I have Mr. Giga Chikadze taking on Kevin Vallejos. A bit of a veteran taking on a up-and-coming contender. Obviously, Giga Chad, long, rangy striker, taking on a guy who, not in his last fight, but his previous two, have come away with finishes. So we'll see what happens there. But Scott, to round out this final fight night of the year and of the ESPN era, what is our event rating for this? How'd they do?
We have a 33 here. Very high level card for Apex standards, right? Main event, obviously, both entertainment potential and stakes. They're also highly ranked in their weight classes here. The co-main isn't as high rated in terms of the ranking, but there are several fights throughout the card that are very important. We named two of them in particular. Eric did. That's a very pivotal fight at 115 pounds on the women's side. But also, we've got 20 out of 26 fighters are in the top 100. This feels like UFC talent all packed in at least. 11 fighters are in the top 30. It speaks to just the depth of high level talent on this one. I think it's a terrific way to sign off on ESPN. I like it.
Alrighty, there we go. And Eric, to round out this weekend, what is your 3 bets in 3 minutes? You ready?
Thank you, Jake. UFC Vegas 122. End of the year, the last time you're going to hear bets from you, most likely, coming out for the rest of the year. 2-3 last week, hoping to end on a high note here. We're going to get started. 3 bets in 3 minutes, put 3 minutes on the clock, and we're going to start right on the main card here. Cesar Almeida versus Sari Olejniczak. You guys, if you've been listening to the show, which you definitely have, you guys know Cesar Olejniczak been my guy. He looked amazing on the Contender Series against Thao Hyde back in the day there. First round finish, didn't absorb a strike. I think that this guy could be one of the really serious contenders at 185 and, massive in the division, 6'3", 75-inch reach. Obviously, his brother, Michelle Olejniczak. Cesar Almeida is mostly the gatekeeper, and I think that Olejniczak gets it done in the first round. I'm going to take him, here by knockout, plus 130, but I think that he can get this done pretty easily. Cesar Almeida, not my favorite over at 185. He did beat Abdul Razak Al Hassan, but lost to Roman Kopylov. Really, his only path here is going to be on the grab, or is going to be standing with him. I don't think you're going to be able to stand and trade with him. Maybe you can get a submission, but Legit gets it done. Minus 230 for your parlays, plus 130 for your knockouts. We move on to the co-main event, and this is the last time I'm taking a shot on Giga Chikadze over at 145. Massive for the division. We got 7-inch reach versus 68-inch reach. He faces Kevin Vallejos. He loves to grapple. We know that. I don't think that he's this excellent grappler. I mean, if Giga Chikadze even got a little bit of takedown defense, he could have been a world champion. I think that ship is probably sailed for him at this point, but I do think that his striking is light years ahead of where Kevin Vallejos is. So I think as the last time I'm taking a shot at Giga Chikadze, plus 280. I think the line's a little out of whack, and I'm taking him here. And then we get to the main event, and it's Manel Kape versus Brandon Royval. oh boy, is this one tasty. Brandon Royval, always coming forward, right? And he high volume. He's looking to grapple. He's looking to strike. He's going to throw elbows. He's massive for 125, as we know. Manel Kape, good counter striker. Usually doesn't lead the dance too much. I think we saw that in the Muhammad Mokaev fight. He doesn't really like to lead the dance. I think he's more of a counter striker, waiting for people to come in and do some damage. The betting line has gotten more out of whack. I'm on Brandon Royval here. I'm on Brandon Royval plus 250. I said earlier, I bet him plus 200, thinking that the line would move and close. It has not. So maybe I'm on the wrong side here. I'm taking Brandon Royval. I think that he's a better fighter. And I think, especially in a 5-round fight, I think that he keeps everything close. I don't think goes to decision at plus 140. I think 4 straight for Brandon Royval have gone to decision. And again, Manel Kape isn't like a finisher here. I mean, yes, as he finished his last 2, he has a little bit lesser of a competition. And I just think that Brandon Royval has a shot here to get a title, and he's going to be leading the dance. We're great on damage here, and unless Manel Kape really dominates in the counter striking, I think that this is going to be a Royval fight. So give me Brandon Royval, take him plus 250, and we'll see where we end up here. We got 2 underdog picks, and we'll see where we end up. But I'm all in on Brandon Royval. This time, Brian gets out of whack. 3 bets in 3 minutes. Appreciate you all year, and we'll talk again in 2026.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Eric. And let's move on to our other big event of this weekend, PFL Lyon, taking place, of course, in Lyon, France. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is Champions Series 4, quote unquote, as well, right?
My understanding is both Champions Series 4 and also PFL Europe 2025 final, or PFL Europe 4, or maybe it's 5. I don't remember. They have a lot of naming conventions, and I think they've got to smooth that out.
No, I love it. No.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Yeah, but that is a little bit earlier. That is 11 a.m. Eastern time. Saturday, correct me if I'm wrong. Saturday, great. Okay, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and that's going to be on ESPN Unlimited. So there you go, Eric. And let's talk about the main event, Vadim Nemkov versus Renan Fajeda for the heavyweight title. And I feel like we have to mention this. Eric, your box office, does this title fight feel legitimate without the PFL's arguably biggest star, Francis Ngannou, certainly at heavyweight? What do you think?
He was certainly the most expensive star ever. Look, Renan Ferreira, in a spot where he kind of is better than everybody not named Francis Ngannou, seemingly everybody's got that problem, right? Francis Ngannou, I haven't seen him since October 2024. I don't know what he is doing. He fought 1 time for PFL. He boxed twice. Unclear if PFL got any of that money. And now his contract is up. He hasn't been showing up to events. I'm assuming he's just not really on the PFL roster anymore. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. I would just assume it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter about Francis Ngannou because he's not going to be on the roster. He said to Ariel Helwani on his podcast earlier this week that his contract is up before the White House card and he wants to fight John Jones in the White House. Probably never going to happen. The UFC, has said a lot of things about him over the past few days, honestly, even years, but even just the last couple of days. Francis Ngannou, it doesn't matter if he's legitimate or not. He's not. I don't think he's going to be on the roster. He's not a PFL fighter. If he doesn't fight for the PFL, he's not a PFL fighter. So as of right now, no.
What do you think, Scott?
As far as if this fight feels legitimate, yeah, obviously the Francis Ngannou thing is the big complication here. It is an inaugural PFL heavyweight title here, so they're just putting together, I think, their 2 heavyweights, their 2 best heavyweights outside of Francis, which is to say probably the ones who are going to be here for a while, because yeah, it does sound like he's got 1 foot out the door. I don't think he's off the roster, but I guess it looks like the end of his contract is approaching in the way he framed it. So yeah, I mean, put together these top 2 heavyweights on the roster. They're both top 10, top 12 level here. Vadim Nemkov, a former champion who just gave up his 205 belt to move up here. I'm tired of the weight cuts and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's fine. Again, you got to contextualize it as we're accepting that Francis Ngannou is not going to fight for PFL anymore. If he was, then yeah, this is silly.
Yeah. I think that does kind of justify it in a way that makes more sense about it. Had we not seen that interview with Ariel Helwani, I think that things would have been a little bit different and just been like, come on, like, what are we doing here? But now I think there's probably a little bit more clarity to what's the situation is at the moment. But let's talk about the co-main event: Chris Cyborg versus Sarah Collins for the women's featherweight title. And Scott, I gotta ask you, in this past stretch of fights that Chris Cyborg has had, it seems like really Larissa Pacheco is the only one that I could really point to as being really anyone of significance. Do you think that there are any more interesting fights for Chris Cyborg before her career is over?
In MMA, I mean, she's made it clear that, or pretty clear anyway, that she wants to finish this journey, this ride in this sport. In PFL, she doesn't really have any aspirations that she's putting out there publicly of like, I'm going to try and go over to the UFC and maybe have some of these big fights. She'd have to go down to 35 anyway. So I think, yeah, in this sport, no, I don't even really need to see this one, to be perfectly honest. I think I'd be more interested in what she might do if she goes over to boxing. Well, she's been over in boxing. She's been boxing a lot more than she's been doing MMA the last few years. But there's been all this back and forth chirping between former friends and teammates, or training partners, I should say. Clarissa Shields, who is, of course, the Olympic champion and longtime champion of professional boxing as well. Just make that fight. I'd be more interested to see how that goes. And frankly, it'd be the first time in a long time where I've looked at a Cyborg fight and said, gee, I wonder. Like, this is like a tough one for her. I'd rather see it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that could be a fun one. But yeah, I agree with MMA. Not really sure if the opponents are very compelling at the moment for her. But Scott, how did they do in the event rating, the PFL? What's the number we got?
So the event rating it's a 6. It doesn't sound very good, and I think the reason for that is because it's just extremely top heavy. You know, the two championship fights are legit. Even Sarah Collins, I believe, is like a top 3 or top 5 women's featherweight, which says a lot actually about the women's featherweight division.
6-0.
Not just now, but not just now, but kind of always. It's kind of always been very, very shallow, right? A lot of puffed up women fighting of their weight class, maybe even 20 pounds over their weight to get up there in some cases. But like I said, the heavyweight fight makes a lot of sense too. I think these are a group of elite fighters. There's also some kind of interesting top 100 notable fights. My women's flyweight prospect, Paulina Vishnevska, she's fighting Sabrina De Sousa, and also Taylor Lapilus against Liam Gittins at bantamweight. Those are two fights. At least they're notable in terms of the world situation here, but I guess maybe a 6 is just a little underrating it, but I don't know how much more I would expect to see and be like, yeah, that makes sense. I think we're still looking at kind of a lower level card that's just top heavy and then a bunch of other guys and gals.
Fair
I would
enough.
also just call out that I would also just call out, I think Cyborg should box Holly Holm. I think that would be a fun boxing fight.
That'd be cool too. Yeah, sure, why
I could
not?
get behind that. I could get behind
Do it
that.
on Jake Paul's boxing promotion. Call it a day. They'll all be happy. You know, everybody.
I'm
will be
less
happy
interested
with
in that one personally, though.
Really?
Then the Clarissa
enough.
fight, I could understand why. Yeah.
Yeah,
But-
I'd rather see that one because, like I said, I like the danger factor. I think I want to see Cyborg actually. And it's not that I'm rooting for Cyborg to lose. I think it'd be really cool to see this woman who's been just a dominant force and predicted to smash every single woman she fought, save for, even ahead of the Amanda Nunes fight. We didn't think that was just a smash fest.
No.
I want to see some danger there. I want to see some doubt, and I want to be intrigued. I think I know how it'd go, but I'd rather see it.
I want to see her come in as a betting underdog for once.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Scott's.
Yeah, that's a good way to frame it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, I'm going to throw it back to you, Scott. Let's talk about some of the news and notes that we missed to talk about. So what do we got for quick hits?
All right, guys, we got a bunch of quick hits here. A lot of fight announcements to go over. Some of them we already found out while watching the card over the weekend. But we have a headliner for UFC 326. That is Max Blessed Holloway against Charles Oliveira. Holloway putting his BMF title on the line. That is official for March 7th in Las Vegas. We talked about that last week as Oliveira was kind of saying March, April. Apparently it's March. Also, we got another headliner announced for February 21st. Yeah, 21st at UFC Houston. The headliner is Sean Strickland against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. That is a pivotal middleweight fight. Potential that the winner gets the next shot at Hamza Chimaev, or the first defense of the new champion there. There's also a co-headliner that we have announced for UFC 325. It is the Dan Hooker against Benoit Saint-Denis, battle of top 10 lightweights in action on this one. Going over another thing that actually came off of Mark Shapiro's conference call yesterday. Zuffa Boxing is planning to have its first event on January 23rd. That would be the day before UFC 324. Would air on Paramount Plus. We don't have a location. We don't have a venue publicly available, but it would certainly make sense if it was in Las Vegas at the same time as the UFC. And then lastly, as it also pertains to Paramount Plus, everything rolls around this, right? The Ultimate Fighter and Dana White's Contender Series, they are both being rolled over into Paramount Plus. It really is becoming a one-stop shop for UFC content. So there you go. That's it.
Alrighty, thank you so much for that, Scott. And guys, it is time to move on to the final round, and let's talk about our homework. Justin Gaethje versus Michael Johnson. This one was a crazy one, honestly, just because of it looked like Gaethje was going to get finished in that first round. Like, if there was more time to that first round, I think that Johnson could have gotten him out of there. But he rallies for the second round. I think I want to say, if I'm remembering correctly, he also took a big shot in that second round. And then he comes back and just goes after Michael Johnson. It was a crazy one. Eric, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you got to also remember where Michael Johnson's coming off of this. He's coming off of a knockout win of Dustin Poirier, but then he also fought Khabib Nurmagomedov on the prelims of Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor. So
that's what I said last week, my guy.
I know, it's crazy.
He's just
but I just got to remember
fans.
that going into it. Yeah, no, you gotta know that. I mean, that's big information to have going into it. Comes in there, it looks like a world beater in round one, and then I remember just being so excited when Justin Gaethje signed from World Series of Fighting. I had watched like one or two of his other fights, and man, like if there's ever a spot for him to wrestle, like we know he's like was a pretty credentialed wrestler prior to his MMA days. To see him, kind of just being like, I'm going to stand and bang here, even though, I'm losing in the beginning, at least. It's, man, Gaethje's just, his whole career has just been violent. Like, he is the most violent guy. This is where he really gets the nickname most violent guy in MMA. This is where, like, it kind of starts.
100%. And Scott, what do we have for our next homework assignment?
I'm giving you guys Renato Babalu Sobral against David Heath. This was back in 2007, I think UFC 74. Doesn't need a whole lot of setup other than just know that David Heath had a not nice thing to say about Babalu before the fight. And I would also, I must insist, you have to watch the post-fight interview as well.
Okay, gotcha. Should we watch the pre-fight as well beforehand?
I don't know how much of one there really was. This was back when the prelims were not really aired, other than as filler on the main cards of pay-per-views. So you didn't really need a whole lot. I don't think they did those video packages as much.
Fair enough.
So yeah, don't worry about that.
Okay.
You'll get everything you need afterward, I promise.
Got it. Okay, very nice. And what about this week in MMA? What are we at?
We're going back 9 years to December 10th. 2016, a UFC Hall of Fame fight between Cub Swanson and Doo-Ho Choi. This doesn't need a whole lot more other than to know it was just these guys went after it. It was a nuts fight. We don't get a lot of, kind of semi-meaningless fights that end up in the UFC Hall of Fame, so that says a lot about the level of violence here. 9 years ago this week, that fight.
Oh, well, there we go. If you know, you know. And Scott, for those MMA junkies, so to speak, who are just itching for one more fight outside of the PFL and the UFC, what do we got for those folks?
I'll give you guys Tough Enough 150. That's on Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern time. You can watch it on Fight Pass. The main fight that I'm singling out here is it's a battle of women's bantamweight prospects fighting for that promotion's regional title. It's Evelyn Martins against Jaylene Robledo, I believe is how do you say it. The winner of that one looks like they're heading places at 135 pounds, probably to the UFC, if not the next fight shortly thereafter. And I'd be curious to see how they do. So here you go.
All right,
Fight Pass too.
Yes, on Fight Pass,
which is free for the rest of the year for anyone that doesn't know.
That is true. That is actually
if
a good.
You don't know now, you know, right?
That's a good quick hit that we missed out on. Thank
Providing
you for that,
volume.
Eric. Yes, that is Eric's
you
your
go.
guy for that. Alrighty, Scott, Eric, as always, it is an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. And for you at home who stuck around to watch, hope you enjoyed it. Enjoy the fights this weekend. Do your homework, and we will see you next week.